Hello and welcome to T2RL Talks Conference Special. In this short series of podcasts, we're going to be highlighting some of the subjects that we'll cover at the T2RL Engage conference in London in September. With me in the studio today, I have Ian Luck, who is head of the distribution practice at T2RL, and Yuna Huelu, who is a senior consultant in distribution. And we also have a very special guest. We have Sean Richards, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Inc. Innovation, one of the companies that is most involved in moving the airline industry into the 21st century, at least as far as its technology is concerned. So good morning, as it is here in the UK right now, and good evening to Yuna, who is in New Zealand. So I want to kick off the conversation by throwing in something that is often quoted at us by people who really should know better, which is that buying airline products online is way too complicated, and it should be just as easy as buying a book on Amazon or a tin of baked beans from Tesco. What do we say to that, Ian?
Yes, it's a common question, and we sometimes see panels and events at conferences debating the subject. We would all like to have a sort of simpler technology stack and be able to move faster. And we think there are ways to do that. No doubt we'll get into that discussion. Sean and other companies are working on that. But there are some complexities that are hard to avoid. We do need to make sure that we operate safely in a very regulated environment. Governments want to know who's on our planes. We need to make sure we're dealing with passports and visas and things. There's a lot of safety issues around people traveling on airplanes. We sell each other's products and have done for many years via Interline. We need to make sure that when one passenger travels on an airplane and connects to another passenger and their bag transfers and all those things are traceable. So that's probably just scratching the surface in terms of the complexity that the airline industry manages. Now, that's, as I said, it's definitely not to say that we shouldn't find ways to improve our technology and make things better and faster and easier for both airlines and staff and customers and everybody involved. But there are some sort of irreducible complexities, we think.
Okay, and I would absolutely agree with that. But given that there are complexities, it's incumbent on us as an industry to work with the available technology to reduce some of those complexities, or at least as far as the customer sees them. And I know that Inc. has been one of the companies most involved in improving the user interface for some of those activities that airlines have to get up to. So, Sean, do you think that the TikTok generation, as we've referred to them, is better served by the sort of applications that you're putting into the market now than maybe by traditional ones?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me on the podcast. I certainly agree with the points that Ian was making, that it is a very complex industry. But to answer your question, I do think it is definitely possible to improve the way the younger generation, pretty much all the generations, interact with the process of buying flights and getting facilitation or delivery done. I think there is a missed opportunity to engineer simplicity into the process. And instead, it is much easier to engineer complexity in. I think if we spend a lot more effort as an industry trying to simplify what the customer needs to do, and actually we take the burden of the complexity instead of landing it onto the customer, I think that is what's going to change the experience. So it's really paying more attention to that UX part of UI, UX, and making sure that we don't make customers carry the can of complexity and integrations and stuff like that.
Okay, and I'll turn to Yuna because she hasn't spoken yet. Do you think that the move of the industry away from traditional structures like PNRs and tickets and EMDs and RBDs and all the other bits of alphabet soup in favor of a straightforward retail order is going to help that process and make it easier to engineer a better user experience?
As someone who's worked in several roles where we had to do process re-engineering to try and simplify things and make them more user-friendly, more customer-friendly, I can say absolutely yes, because those were the main constraints that we would always bump up against. That meant that, we could design the most streamlined version of a check-in or buying a ticket as possible. But then once you added in the constraints of what the technology could do, you had to put complexity back into the process. So I think that, yes, there's a huge opportunity there.
Okay, and that's probably lost sometimes in all the noise around the industry's migration, is that this really does represent a huge opportunity. But even before that migration's taken place, Sean, I know that Inc. has been working on, maybe we could call it a new vision for delivery, and a vision in which actually delivery gets involved as soon as the sale is made, or even before the sale is made, to smooth out the process, the user experience for customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're taking part in some of the workshops run by IATA in terms of trying to define what delivery is, but we do have a very strong vision that retailing should play a very important part. After all, it's modern airline retailing. Why should retailing stop when you sell the fare, right? There's a lot more things to sell. We call them ancillaries, and then we label them as third-party content. But in the end, it's just stuff that you need to sell. Now, customers want to buy things without being overwhelmed with, too many offers in the wrong place in the wrong way. But definitely, we see an opportunity during the delivery phase, not just to sell more things, but to service customers better. Because when you give someone something, you need to really pay more attention to tracking the facilitation of it. Did they receive it? Is it any good? What do they think of it? And that is where the industry needs to raise its game. Offer order gives an opportunity in the delivery phase to define how much emphasis we place on caring about the services we deliver, not just selling them.
Okay, I think that's a very important point. And I guess one of the other points that always has to come up in a discussion of user experience is that we can do an awful lot in our direct channels. We can, and we have been doing for the last 20 years, the experience of buying in the direct channel compared to buying through an intermediated channel can be really quite different. But are we held back in doing some of the innovative stuff we would like to do in direct channels by the need to keep the indirect channels, the agencies, on side with what we're doing? Ian, are they the big travel management companies that you talk to, or the online travel agencies, are they properly on board with the move to improve user experience?
I think most agencies of whatever type are keen to be able to offer a wide range of products and services to their customers. There are clearly some products that are more relevant to certain customer types. A leisure customer is potentially interested in tours and trips and things like that, which might not be less of interest to a TMC. But nearly every agency you talk to says, if airlines have got content they're offering, I'd like the chance to be able to look at it and decide whether it's relevant to my customers. There's clearly been some kind of commercial and technology friction to kind of making that work. NDC has taken some time to roll out and make work. That is the way that we're going to kind of enable more products that we produce on the airline side to be distributed to the travel agency side. But I think everybody's on board with the desire to have access to as much content as they can get, and then work out what's the right content to provide to their customers.
And most of the big agencies, certainly the TMCs who are working with the big corporate customers, are providing online booking tools to those accounts. Are the online booking tools actually keeping up with the rate of change that we hope we're seeing?
It's an interesting one. I mean, online booking tools to some extent have always operated in a sort of hybrid way with the TMC themselves. Sometimes the initial booking is made on the booking tool by the corporate traveller, and then a lot of the services and facilitation that happens after that is managed by the TMC themselves. I think we are seeing developments in the online booking tool space. We're seeing online booking tools talk about the ability to change bookings, provide extra services than perhaps they did in the past. I think there's still a question about, in the corporate travel world, exactly how far that's going to go. Are we going to see corporate customers really doing everything themselves? Perhaps the TikTok generation or Gen Z or whatever you want to call them will be more focused on some of those things. We also see some airlines talking a lot about omni-channel, which feels like a bit of a buzzword, but I think when you get down to it, the idea that the customer could book in one place, change the booking in the airline's app, that would flow back to the TMC, so the TMC knows what's happened. The customer can self-serve if they want to, go back to their agency for other things. If we can get all of that right, that perhaps works well in the kind of world we're in, where lots of people are changing their services, buying new products after the original purchase on their phones while they're actually in transit, those sorts of things.
And really that comes back to what Una was saying earlier about the constraints they had in various past lives that she's had, where they tried to change user experience and came up against the complexities of the data structures. All of that omni-channel work should become much more straightforward if we have better standards around orders.
I think so. There's a couple of areas that come to mind when we talk about travel sellers that have been causes of either friction, or they've been excluded from really interacting with in the past, which might change. And that would be doing a better job at disrupt management. That's something that TMCs and leisure agencies as well, but particularly TMCs speak about a lot. They really hope that we'll get to a point where they have a lot more visibility of what's going on, and they can really assist and work with the airline to take care of that passenger when things do change, when plans change. And the other one is loyalty. Up until now, there's been very limited visibility of who the customer is, what they're entitled to, and how we make that experience a bit more sticky when they're booked through a corporate travel agency, for example. The data doesn't always flow as well as it could, and then it can't be utilized as well as it could. So I think there's a few things like that seem reasonably close on the horizon to address, that would add a lot of value for the corporate travel agencies and for the customers and for the airlines.
Okay, and Sean, Una mentioned disruption there, and clearly that's a big factor when you're trying to modernize your distribution, delivery capabilities. What's been your experience of integrating better management of disruption into the pioneering work you're doing around delivery?
Yeah, so we're doing some quite interesting work with another company that specializes in disruptions and IROPS. And a lot of that has been to enable them to orchestrate. So orchestration is a thing that crops up time and time again. So we're doing within delivery journey orchestration. We're getting involved with orchestrating payment orchestrators. So we're orchestrating other orchestrators because they specialize in what they do and we don't. What we want to do is give the customer the outcome that they want. The customer, the guests, they want to achieve something. And the best way to do that is to bring in experts and have very flexible workflows that give the experts what they need in order to do what they're experts at. So in IROPS, there's a lot of orchestration of what needs to happen, moving someone onto another flight and stuff like that. So what we've been doing is concentrating on making our system a good citizen that allows them to do what they need in order to orchestrate, rather than us pretending to be, experts in orchestration. And I think the industry has a lot to learn from that approach when you follow the modular architecture that IATA is pushing under offer order. It's trying to get the best of breed, lots of different best of breed suppliers, but then they have to learn how to play nice with each other instead of trying to own the entire process.
And that really comes back around to the idea that in order to do a lot of these things, and as you said, Sean, to shield the customer from the complexity underneath and present them with a coherent user experience that does all the stuff they need to do, that the data standards that sit underneath it just have to be there and have to be robust and have to be followed by all the participants in the market. My sort of experience of the last couple of decades really is that when companies with great expertise in other fields approach the airline industry, they take one look at the data standards around PNRs and tickets and so on, and throw up their hands in horror and quite often just run away. So we should be moving away from that as we move into the world of offer and order, which are reasonably well designed and reasonably well house trained data standards. So looking forward to September, we're all going to be there in London, and we will be continuing this conversation. And one of the themes in the conversation at T2RL Engage will be how the industry as a whole is going about implementing the move to offer order or modern airline retailing. And I know that those of us on this podcast will be there and ready to engage in that conversation. Is there anything that you would like to highlight and have people think about ahead of September before they come and join us in London? What are the key issues around making this work for the TikTok generation? Anyone got any suggestions on that? Ian, you're smiling.
Not sure I'm in the TikTok generation, so I'm not entirely. And my kids are not quite old enough yet, but somewhere soon I'm sure I'll be more exposed to it. I mean, I guess the key thing, there's definitely some things about working together and modularity that's really important, how different technology players can cooperate. We hear more about that. I would definitely encourage airlines and others to be vendors to be thinking about how they can work together really effectively. I think that is a critical point that Sean raises. I think it's good for all airlines, as they do, to be thinking about, what products do they really want to bring to market? How are they going to do that effectively? So I guess what do people want to do is the product piece, and how are they going to do it by working together and being modular? Some of the things that I think airlines should be thinking about.
Okay. And Sean, what are you going to be looking forward to talking about most at Engage in September?
Yeah, well, look, we're really looking forward to challenging some airlines on what are they actually doing, right? So it's enough to have a new standard and talk of including different players and stuff like that. But really, we're all heavily dependent on airlines wanting to take a chance. So they have to be willing to experiment. They're the ones with the volume. They're the ones at the top of the commercial tree. And they are the ones that need to feed other players, not just large incumbents, if the industry wants a vibrant ecosystem. So instead of waiting for an incumbent supplier to, do their version of innovation, we would really like to challenge airlines to, kind of say what they want to try, what they want to do, and realize that it's actually not that hard to experiment. You do not have to endanger your operation. There are different ways to experiment and, do A/B testing of processes, not just interfaces. So we're really looking forward to T2RL Engage to be able to do that.
Okay, so I would encourage all airline participants in the conference in September to find some time to talk to Sean, because he is buzzing with ideas about how processes can be improved and how we can better serve our customers of whatever generation. I'm just going to come finally to Una, because Una, unlike Ian, I think you do own a member of the TikTok generation. What are you looking forward to in September?
I do indeed. I think, do you know what I would love to see, actually? Because I think it's always really valuable to involve people closest to problems and people with fresh ways of looking at problems into looking at the future. I hope that the airlines and vendors that attend the conference in September consider bringing some of the younger members of their companies along to the conference. We tend to have a lot of experts with a lot of years of experience and all the tales to tell, but I think it would be really valuable to bring some of the younger members of the workforce from those companies along to the conference, because a lot of the technology and a lot of the problems that need to be solved will be theirs to own in the years to come. And we're at a turning point, and it would be great to see some young faces at the conference.
Okay, I would absolutely endorse that view. And just a reminder to airline listeners that there is no charge for airline delegates to attend the conference. So if you can bring one or two of your younger staff members along to shed some light on this conversation especially, please do that. So with that, I'll wrap this conversation up with yet another reminder to be in London in September. We hope to see as many as possible of our listeners at the T2RL Engage conference, which is in a new venue this year in the shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral, if you want a bit of history. And we hope to have a very, very interesting event for you and by you. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll see you again the next edition of T2RL Talks.